Hello, welcome to Astro Hi-Fi. My name is Gabby Turner, and in this video I wanted to do a thorough exploration of the planet Uranus and the type of energies it can bring that are both constructive and disruptive. When we see Uranus in aspect via a transit or in aspect in a person's natal chart or in the chart of an event or anything like that. So we're going to be looking at the Sun, Mercury, Venus, Mars, North Node, Ascendant, and Moon. I ended up leaving the Moon for the last, but it's actually one of the more interesting combinations of Uranus with any of the planets. But yeah, we'll look at the constructive of Uranus with each of these planets, or the angle or the node. And then what is it like when they're destructive? All right, so let's look at what happens in a natal chart or in a transit when we have the planet Uranus forming an association with the Sun via an aspect. So a conjunction, an opposition, a square, a sextile, a trine. I mean, we could get into each of those aspects individually, but how the two energies of these planets, the Uranus and the Sun, work together does depend on the type of aspect. But it can be constructive no matter what. You could have a square, for example, which is normally seen as a sort of friction creating type of aspect, and that can still be constructive. So we're just looking, first of all, at the constructive energies. Then we'll look at the destructive energies of Uranus when it comes in contact with the Sun. All right, so if Uranus is being constructive with the Sun, so let's say you have Sun conjunct Uranus in a natal chart, or Sun trine Uranus, or Sun opposition Uranus in a natal chart, or let's say transiting Uranus is making a sextile to your Sun, or an opposition to your Sun. So we have some sort of contact between these two planets, either in natal or transit. You're going to experience constructively sort of an optimistic futurism, because Uranus focuses you towards the future, and the Sun brings a sense of optimism. And so you bring those two together. It could be also like, there could be, if this is a transit, maybe you have something really wonderful to look forward to and you feel optimistic about it. That would be a constructive way of experiencing this. Or you're trying to make plans for the future and you feel optimistic about those plans, that you can have a generally very favorable or even extremely favorable outcome. We can also have a sort of heroic drive that comes up in someone. So if this was a natal placement, maybe that would just be an aspect of their personality. If it's a transit, it could just be a theme that emerges in someone's life in some way, dealing with heroics. And especially with the Sun Uranus, this could also be the anti-hero, or just taking up the cause of the underdog, or taking up the cause of the rebel. Generally, if we're thinking of it in terms of a constructive experience, this would be a positive, a happy, enjoyable experience of a drive to be some sort of hero. Uranus, the planet itself, is associated with Prometheus. Prometheus gave fire to people, and most of the gods and goddesses didn't like that because it was one thing that set them apart. So Uranus does like to destroy barriers, even restrictions or limitations. So when we talk about heroics here, the Sun is what brings in the heroics, but also Uranus is, even in and of itself, known to be someone who will stand up for the masses even if you're going against establishment norms or establishment hierarchy. Uranus is pretty anti-hierarchy because it's one form of creating order and structure, and Uranus usually likes to break down order and structure. But anyway, in a heroic way, in this case, so this would be like sending the wooden horse into Troy to bring down Troy. If you're on the side trying to do that, then you are a hero for being able to be disruptive. Also, you can have an eccentric hero with Uranus Sun, or like an everyman type of hero, like if you're looking at a story or an allegory, Uranus and the Sun together. It's like you're living out a theme that the common person often experiences. And so it could be a time in your life, if this were a transit, for example, where you're on the hero's journey. I have that listed here as well. So you're experiencing life as if you're on the hero's journey, and you're very connected to those sorts of themes of, wow, this is my life. I am the star of my own life. I am the main character. I'm the main character, and yet, even as the main character, somehow my life seems to represent or be connected with some human theme that all humans go through at some level, which is also known as the hero's journey. So if you have this type of aspect in your natal chart, this could just be an ongoing theme in your life or an ongoing aspect of your personality. What I also see with Uranus and the Sun constructively is group inspiration. So this could, if it's a transit, it could bring you into contact with a group where you're very inspired. You share some sort of passion with this group of people. Or you inspire a group. You're an inspiration to a group of people. If it's in your natal chart, you could just, be someone who naturally is drawn to group dynamics. But Uranus and the Sun are interesting because there is the drive to find a like-minded group, but there is also with the Sun a desire to stand out, like the Sun and Uranus both stand out in their own ways. The Sun because it's the center of the solar system. Uranus because it's, it's on its side. It's very different from the other planets. And it refuses to conform. But in any case, so this can make, through transit also, I would see like organized joy. Or maybe you're someone who likes to organize fun times. You like to bring people together as a group to have fun, perhaps. Or if this is a transit, there could be lots of those types of moments. I also have written fun and friendship. Those are strong themes here. And new amazements. Yeah, so if it's a transit, maybe, you would have some really dazzling new experience that you'd never had before. So that's what I'm getting for the constructive side of Uranus-Sun aspects, either in natal or in transit. So let's look at the destructive. All right, now we're looking at the destructive ways that Uranus and the Sun can work together, either in a natal chart or via transit. I feel that this can bring about vengeful power. So like power plays, especially as it relates to groups. So let's say if you were the member of a group and you had a Sun-Uranus aspect, it could feel very restrictive to you sometimes because you're wanting to stand out as your own person. And yet you're associated with this group, and as a member of this group, you're at the same level as everyone else. It's making me think of like Justin Timberlake and NSYNC, It's like the desire to be your own success balanced with the, experience of, okay, but I do belong to this group. At its worst, at its best, you would have something like Justin Timberlake and NSYNC, like the group still exists, but the individual gets to go off and do their own thing. But if you have someone who's feels too hemmed in by this group thing, then they could become vengeful, or there could be some sort of struggles over power. It would be an ego struggle to say, listen, yes, I'm a member of this group, but I'm a spectacular member of this group. I have to be treated with greater respect. I have to stand out in some way. If were the member of an army or something with Uranus Sun, you would probably want to be in charge because you would be wanting to get respect, even though you know that you are still one of many members of this army. I don't know, just as an example. The term shock and awe made me think of Uranus Sun because Uranus is shocking. It brings about surprising, unexpected events. And then the sun is just spectacular, It's the only thing in the solar system that gives off its own light. So yeah, Uranus and the sun at its worst could be things like explosions and violent disruptions, violent blasts, things like that. Like literal destruction, but especially very fiery destruction. And I wrote weaponized heroics here. I don't even know what I was thinking when I wrote this, but again, Uranus and the sun both kind of like to be the hero in some way. And sometimes I guess there can be a struggle or a conflict, which could be an inner conflict that a person experiences during a transit or because they have this aspect in natal, or an external struggle between, like who gets to be the hero? Is it the team of firefighters that I am a member of? Or do I get special recognition for the fact that I went above and beyond everyone else? I also wrote false prophet here. I think this is because Uranus and the sun both can really gather together groups of people. They're both very good at that. So the whole follower, the whole Pied Piper phenomena comes up. I should have put that on here, Pied Piper. Uranus and the sun, they can bring about a Pied Piper effect where someone is saying, this is the way that we should all go. Let's all go in this direction. And people just start following this person because they seem to know where they're going. And it instills this sense of confidence in the followers. And, so who knows? This Pied Piper could be leading you off a cliff. Sometimes I think, I think for all of these, maybe groupthink comes up at a little bit for the destructive aspect, even in the other planets that we look at. But yeah, I think with Uranus and the sun, it's specifically like, how can groupthink keep us from seeing that someone's ego might be more in charge of the group dynamic than their altruism, because the sun can be very altruistic, but it can also be very ego-driven and needs attention and all of that. All right, so I've also written technologies of destruction. So you can have a Uranus-Sun transit, and then maybe you have surgery or something because, Uranus has to do with technology. And, it could be something like that. You could be experiencing warfare. Maybe if you have this in your natal chart, you're someone who would know how to design weaponry, or even like a violent rebel. You could be leading a rebellious revolution or something like that, and coming up with ways of organizing. So technology isn't just objects, but it's also like ways of maneuvering, like propaganda even, things like that. And then we also have plans for dismantling. So sometimes things just need to be dismantled, and then in that sense, we're using the word destructive here as literally, like destructing, dismantling. It's not neither good nor bad. Sometimes things do need to be broken down. It's a natural process and a useful process. Our bodies are always breaking down the food that we eat, for example. But with Uranus and the Sun, maybe in terms of a transit, maybe you would be inspired to make plans to renovate your house or something like that. Or you would want to make plans for ending your career so that you could transition into a different career and make a really big change for yourself. All right, so those are some of the themes here with Sun and Uranus. Let's move on to the next planet. Welcome to the continuation of this Uranus constructive and destructive video. In this segment, we're looking at what happens when the planet Uranus and the planet Mercury come together in an aspect in someone's natal chart or via transit, and there are constructive outlets of those two planets coming together, meaning, constructive could mean positive, but constructive could also mean like, creating something new, giving birth to something. All right, so first we have gadgets and gizmos. I don't know, so maybe that's helpful. In a natal chart, for example, this could be someone who's interested in those types of things, or even who designs those types of things or has a lot of knowledge. And someone who's a tech whiz or who uses technology a lot, perhaps, could be in a natal chart. Or if you had a transit of Uranus to your natal Mercury, maybe you would become more interested in technology, or you would become more interested in rebellion or chaos. I don't know, maybe you just want to learn more about these concepts. You would have a very fast mind, either by natal or transit. This is going to speed up your thought processes. Curiosity is going to be unbound during a transit like this, or if it's in your natal, that's going to probably be just a natural aspect of your personality, is you have this like very vast curiosity. The highest possible speed internet would be a joy to have in order to be constructive with this sort of aspect between Uranus and Mercury. Of course, in terms of mundane astrology, these two planets bring up themes that have to do with media networks, professional hubs, social tribes, group members, group communications, any kind of network that allows people to, like a social network, but also that just allows people to communicate about a particular topic. Would be a Uranus-Mercury theme. So I would think that if you're having a transit of Uranus to your natal Mercury, you're probably just going to be having a lot of communications, or very sudden communications, or unexpected communications, or thought processes. Yeah, maybe you would be writing something unconventional, like if you were an author. You could be writing something very unconventional during this time. Associating with neighborhoods. Mercury rules neighborhoods, so this could be just finding a quirky, unusual, eccentric neighborhood to belong to, or just changing your neighborhood. Changing up the group of people that you're with can be a constructive thing to do sometimes. All right, so let's switch gears. What about when Uranus and Mercury come together and there are destructive outcomes of that? So either in a natal chart, someone has a Mercury-Uranus conjunction or opposition or even a sextile, and then there are destructive things that come of that, or a transit of these planets to each other. So of course, technological disruptions, that's destructive, I suppose, but it's also just frustrating for most people. And depending on how big the disruption is, if you have some sort of hacking thing going on, sometimes there can be a lot of challenges in getting things back to normal. So tech disruptions can be very destructive. So I would think like any sort of cyber intelligence would also relate to Uranus and Mercury. I didn't put that down though. Also a distracted mind. Wow, Uranus and Mercury together, they're so distracted because they just need constant stimulation. And we live in a world where there is a lot of constant stimulation. There's always a screen to be looking in, something to be listening to. So that of course can be very destructive. Erratic thinking, chaotic communication, groupthink. Especially, I feel like with Uranus and Mercury, you can have issues related to like algorithms and networks and things like that. Anything about online about how information is linked to you. The fact that the information that's getting to you is having such an effect on how you act in terms of the group around you as well. Are you in line with the rest of the group? Are you going against the rest of the group? It might have something to do with the information you have. We also have disruptive media that seeks to be disruptive, which could be like they're rebelling against the status quo or something like that, or just doing something, approaching news and journalism and media in new and innovative ways. Also, Uranus and Mercury could bring about, especially in a transit or something like an abrupt change in communication, like when someone suddenly ghosts you, or when someone just pops out of nowhere. Either of those can be sort of destructive in the effect that it's sort of just shocking, or, like we didn't expect that to happen, and the unexpected always brings a need to problem solve. Uranus does inspire us to problem solve, but sometimes through bringing destructive or unwanted experiences into our lives. Thank you for continuing to enjoy this video with me. So we're moving through all of the planets that Uranus could make contacts to in a natal chart or via transit. And now we're at Venus, and we're looking first at the constructive outcomes that can come about when you have some sort of aspect between these two planets, no matter what the aspect is. Constructive experiences or outcomes can come of it, and also destructive. All right, so we're using those terms loosely, constructive and destructive. Constructive could mean creative, it could mean positive. Destructive could mean negative, but it also could just be bringing an end to something. And of course, everything has to come to an end. All right, so what happens when Uranus and Venus come together and there are constructive outcomes? First of all, there could be a lot of social enjoyment, because Uranus has to do with large groups of people, so you can think about festivals and things like that. And Venus likes enjoyment, sensual enjoyment, like listening to music or eating good food. So anything where you're bringing a large group of people together and people are enjoying themselves, they're enjoying the sights and the sounds and the tastes, and also the social exchange, because of course Venus is a very social planet. So if you're having, for example, some sort of transit from Uranus to your natal Venus, a positive outcome of that is that you could have a really enjoyable social experience around that time. Uranus is a slow-moving planet, so it's going to be something very significant. If you're looking at it the other way around, Venus transiting your natal Uranus, you may not see as much of a big life experience from that, but you might have something momentary. But also, and if you have these aspects natally, you could be someone who's very drawn to social events like this. Or someone who's good at creating big social events like this. We also have happy friends. We have like-minded, so you're going to be looking for people who are like-minded to you. And probably those people are going to be a little bit difficult to find because with Venus, Uranus, you are attracting with Venus that which is unusual, because that's what Uranus is about. So you're looking for other weirdos. You're looking for people who are eccentric and quirky like you and who will like you back for your own quirks and eccentricities. Or just you want to be appreciated for your uniqueness and vice versa. During these types of transits, those would be your stronger themes. Your interactions with oddballs, weirdos, misfits, like you would have more acceptance of this, and or it's more accepted from you, or both. And I'd say just positive experiences regarding weirdos and subcultures and things like that. People who are on the fringes of society. You could be quite drawn to those types of experiences and have very unique and interesting social experiences because you're drawn to those things. All right, so what happens when Uranus and Venus come together in a natal chart or in a transit and they bring about destructive outcomes? So this, of course, if it's a natal, it may be destructive aspects of the person's personality or the types of themes they often experience throughout their life. Through transits, it would be, if it's a transit from Uranus to Venus, it's going to be a very significant life event that brings about these sort of destructive experiences and or themes. So one of those is cult trends. I guess that could be positive or negative depending on, like how out of control it gets. I mean, sometimes cult trends can be kind of fun, like Rocky Horror Picture Show. But then you can have other cult trends that become like disruptive in a violent way, for example, or just people who are like, I don't know, like you can have, well, I don't think I can even say it here, but like people can create clubs around very toxic and negative things. Things that are self-destructive, things that are destructive towards others. So with cult trends, I guess anything like that, where it's like, okay, I've found a like-minded group of people, but we're actually, like very toxic and ruining each other's lives through this association that we have. All right, another thing could be outcasts and rejects. So again, it could just be the experience of that. Again, that could be a common experience for you if you have a natal aspect, or if it's a transit. This could just be a significant experience you have where you feel very much like a reject, or you're having experiences with rejects. You're maybe making friends with people who are rejects, but they're still having that difficult experience of being a reject, right? We have issues related to outsiders, to rebel artists. Now, I combined those in particular because Venus has to do with art and the sensibilities, all of the five senses, which of course are utilized in making art, and Uranus is the rebel. So, this could bring about our, in a natal chart, it could be a rebellious artist type person, someone who makes art that is very original or subversive or something like that. Or in a transit, it could inspire you to be very interested in that type of art, or to start making that type of art, or just, to start making friends with people who are interested in these types of things. Uranus and Venus are both very social, so certainly there is going to be something notable about the social life of this person. If this is a natal placement, they'll have a very unique, very eccentric social life. It won't be normal. They might have lots of odd, disparate groups of people that they're erratic friend groups. Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. Now, not all of this is necessarily destructive. This is just coming out here. And again, even the words destructive and constructive can mean different things. But also with Uranus, Venus, we have breakups. We can also have sudden coming together, like suddenly getting involved in a friend group, or suddenly getting involved in a certain aesthetic, if it's really the Venus part of it that's lighting up. But also, like I said, an ending, such as a breakup. There can also be a stronger desire with this to people please, because again, as I said earlier, Uranus and Venus are both very social. And I would say a consistent feeling, in a natal chart, there could be a consistent feeling of never belonging, because this is someone who really seeks a group. Like, I relate better to the group than I do the individual when we have Venus and Uranus together, or they struggle with those two. Like, how do I relate to people as individuals versus how do I relate to people as a group? But anyway, I think there can be a struggle to feel that you truly ever belong, because it's always like, I'm the misfit, even if you find the outsider group, you're going to feel like you're the outsider within that outsider group. And it's not even that you're trying to do this. It's like I think with Venus, Uranus, you're always going to notice how you happen to be different from the people that you are around. So it is a little bit difficult to understand that to focus on the similarity aspect of it more than the differences sometimes. All right, so that's all I've got for Uranus and Venus. Let's move on to the next planet. All right, so now we're getting to the portion of the video where we talk about how Uranus and Mars will behave constructively in either a natal chart or in a transit when they come together via aspects. So no matter what the aspect is, whether it's a conjunction or a trine or a square or opposition or whatever, how could these two possibly behave constructively if they were to be coming together, like I said? So the first thing that I've written in is explorer. So like in a natal chart, this can make someone want to be very exploratory, because Uranus is always looking for the novel and the new, the unexplored, the unusual. And Mars has to do with our drives and our impulses. If this were a transit, for example, from Uranus to Mars, perhaps you would have a stronger drive or identity with being someone who's unusual or eccentric, or someone who goes against the grain. That becomes more of a part of your identity in a constructive way. So you're going to start to use that. I am individualistic. I'm an iconoclast. I'm a maverick. You're going to start to hone in on those energies and put them to use for you, to explore the unexplored, to create that has not yet been created. Also with Uranus and Mars, you're going to have someone who's very assertively unique. So in a natal chart, you'll notice those qualities in the person. In transit, it could just bring about more of those qualities in you, or whoever the transit is for, whoever is having this transit that you're looking at. Of course, this is going to be more pronounced and make a more major shift in your life if it's a transit from Uranus to Mars, rather than the other way around, because Mars moves much more quickly. And because Uranus moves slowly, those transits are more of like big, significant, long-held life changes. So it can bring, with transits, it can push you into being more of an individual, more of an unrestricted genius as well. And this is something that I saw another astrologer say recently, that a Uranus opposition in and of itself is a sort of genius transit. That lots of people have very sort of like important moments where they have brought some sort of genius into the world during their Uranus opposition, which is like a full moon for Uranus. And I cannot think of her name, so I'll try to include it later, so that you can watch her video about this if you want. But yeah, I think with Uranus and Mars, because Mars has to do with our drive, what motivates us. So if we have an aspect between those two, it's wants you to get in touch with. It's like a lightning bolt to your genius. Uranus will create that lightning bolt. It will electrify your drive towards anything that is especially innovative, unique. So I've also written here innovative ventures. Also, generally speaking, this has to do with preferring new ways over old ways, or preferring development. You would prefer to develop something. If it's past its use, it needs to be further developed. I would think that this would be a drive of Uranus Mars, which could be used constructively. So what happens when Uranus and Mars come together destructively? These are some of the themes that I've come up with and experiences that you could have, whether this aspect is happening in a natal chart or via transit. So rudeness and friends. Maybe you could have friendship experiences or group experiences where there is just a lot of rudeness. People are rowdy, people are selfish, people are fighting, people are not getting along. We can also have tyranny, where someone tries to assert themselves over the group. We're dealing with issues related to that. Explosive anger, because Uranus is always very unexpected. It's like a shocking display of anger, perhaps, or a shocking display of assertion. So maybe if you were having a transit like this, you would have developed very unique, unpredictable ways of defending yourself or going on the offensive. So yeah, you're pulling out tricks that nobody's seen before in order to move ahead in the game of life as it is. War technology obviously makes a lot of sense with Uranus Mars aspects. I mean, if it's in your natal chart, of course, this could be someone who's drawn to these types of things. Or if it's a transit, maybe you become interested or involved in that type of thing. Maybe not. These are all just possibilities. Also, of course, group domination, or like issues regarding group domination. So like hazing would be a Uranus-Mars type of event. Also, online bullying or online aggression of any form, trying to, push other people around using online networks or like any networks, basically. Also, it's like the conflict that naturally exists between self-interest versus group needs. So I put this under destructive just because it's not like bad. It's going to happen, and it will create a conflict because it's very difficult to serve both self-interest and the group need at the same time. So it can be very difficult and frustrating and lead to anger within groups because certain people don't feel that their self-interests are met versus others and things like that. So I suppose Uranus and Mars also would be interested then in democracy, and I just didn't think of that until now, but Under the destructive side of that is just that when you try to have something like democracy, it is very difficult, and it's naturally going to create a lot of conflict. It's like inherently trying to be democratic is problematic because people want to assert their Mars and break away with their Uranus. So Uranus Mars energy also is someone who wants to break away from the fold, and it's almost like it can be someone who wants to be the black sheep almost. And yeah, it's like almost aggressively wanting to be the outcast. And why? Who knows? I don't know. But that's what I'm getting for Uranus Mars destructive qualities. Let's move on to the next planet. Okay, so let's talk about what can happen that is positive or constructive. Constructive meaning creating something new, an outcome that is wanted. When Uranus and North Node come together, either in a natal chart or via a transit. The first thing is that there is going to be a challenge to innovate. So with the North Node, I mean, anything that's positive is going to also be a challenge. The North Node it will make life more positive for us if we pursue our life's challenge. And in this case, when it's paired up with Uranus, there is a challenge to be innovative or to be Uranus-like in some way. So innovative is one way that you could be challenged. I think we're seeing that in the world today right now a lot with Uranus and the North Node both together in Taurus, is that we're being challenged to innovate in the Taurus areas of life, which have to do with meeting our basic needs, like accessing the food and the resources and the material comforts that we want, like heat and clothing and things like that, and having the food that we want. So it requires a lot of innovation right now because these work both ways. Uranus also brings instability. And with that instability, it's going to trigger the North Node to say, okay, you are challenged to deal with what you've created with your Uranian energy. But also constructively, Uranus in the North Node can show us that there is a need to lay a groundwork somewhere, right? So whatever is happening, something's being shaken up, and it is exposing through being shaken up. Uranus exposes and brings, awareness to a need to lay a groundwork for something more improved, for something more better, for something that will suit the needs of the masses, be good for the common good. So laying the groundwork for the common good, I think, could be a Uranus North Node theme. So if you had this in your chart, in your natal chart, Uranus conjunct North Node, I don't know. You would be probably part of a generation that has a strong need to do this. If you have Uranus aspecting your North Node, I would say it's just encouraging you to do these types of things. Making widespread plans implemented, and then there's a goal-oriented energy because there's a feeling that maybe I'll find my sense of purpose through some sort of network or through some sort of group association with people who have a like mind, who see the same challenge that I see and want to work together as a network of people in order to address this same important issue. So yeah, I think it would definitely be a transit, increase your desire to do something important with your life. And in order to do that, to find a tribe or, like a like-minded group of people who are also doing something similar so that you can connect with those people and get further together, ideally. or use technologies to get further along, or all of the above. Sometimes Uranus really likes distance and ice, like kind of likes to have a barrier. So this could also be someone who uses at some level like isolation or being a lone wolf to their advantage in order to pursue the life challenges that they see as being worthy of being pursued. All right, what about when you have the Uranus aspecting the North Node and there are destructive outcomes? What kinds of destructive outcomes would we have with Uranus and the North Node, possibly, by any sort of aspect? One thing I wrote down here is just life would sort of feel like a house of cards, always falling. So if you had a transit, for example, maybe you would go through a period of life where it always feels like that. No matter what I try to build up in my life, it eventually falls apart. If you have this in natal, this could be like just a theme that you experience a lot in life. There's a lack of stability that impedes progress. So maybe you're just like, dang, like every time I try to make any sort of progress, something falls in my path, some sort of obstacle arises, or there's some sort of setback. Unexpected challenges abound. And also, it becomes a challenge to organize around the unexpected. So even in their most destructive, these to me don't come across as so negative, really. It's just the fact that change is difficult. And when we're trying and trying and trying to make some sort of progress and we keep having obstacles, that's incredibly frustrating. But that is what the North Node wants us to experience in these instances because we're being asked to be challenged. That's what the North Node does. It challenges you so that you can experience some sort of growth. So continuing to try to problem solve and look towards the future and see solutions and see ways out, even when you're having this House of Cards experience, shows a certain sort of tenacity that the North Node is trying to teach you. And also the North Node here is trying to teach you of how unique you can be in coming up with solutions to move forward. All right. So the challenge itself is part of the lesson. That's what the North Node always wants to remind us. All right, so let's move on to the next planet. All right, welcome to this portion of the video where we will be talking about Uranus when it is in aspect to the Ascendant. So this can either be in a natal chart or in transit. So what are some constructive outcomes that can come when Uranus and the Ascendant are making contact? So the Ascendant has to do with like who we are, like fresh off the presses, like can people immediately know about us? That's what our Ascendant has to do with. And it's a true aspect of us, but it's the aspect of us that is it's like the lid or the doorway to us. Those are true aspects of us. And it's just the initial knowledge that you have of a person's. With some people, they're more closed off and you don't really know much about them in the beginning. With other people, it's like all of their personality kind of bursts out there. But with Uranus, in aspect to the Ascendant, you could have an innovative person, a very iconic identity, a trendsetter, a person who identifies with icons, because the Ascendant is also, what we identify with. So they could identify with other trendsetters. For example, they could have a star presence. This person could be very dazzling upon meeting them. It's like being dazzled or glamored. There's a little bit of a fairy dust quality sometimes with Uranus. A sparkling persona. And this person could come across like they are experiencing the fool's journey, you know? Like just taking the ride, taking the leap of faith. They exude that sort of quality. Now, if this is a transit, then these types of personality traits could just be arising in the person at this time or more noticeable about them. Because anytime we have a transit to the ascendant, it adjusts that immediate look of the person or the immediate aura that is visible about that person. So with Uranus here, it will bring more Uranus qualities to them during the time that it's making an aspect via transit to their ascendant. So if Uranus was transiting conjunct your ascendant, for example, you could be seen right now as very trendy or very rebellious. But in some way, you're going to be showing up some sort of Uranus aspects in a very immediate way. All right, what could the outcomes be that would be destructive, which would be either unwanted or just destructive in the sense of breaking things apart when we have Uranus and the ascendant making an aspect to each other, either in a natal chart or via transit? So this could indicate a reckless person. In a natal chart, someone who just tends to be reckless. Via transit, it could bring about a reckless period in a person's life. Rebelliousness, forcing disruption. This could be someone who is seen as forcing disruption. They could be seen as being very chaotic. They could be known for that, or they just give that appearance. A flighty or a fickle person, a frenemy, because you're like, okay, this is an association, but what kind of association is this person to me? I don't know. They could give off that vibe. Also, someone who's maybe stealing the spotlight, because it could seem like this person is intentionally acting weird in order to get attention, maybe, or to get focus on them. And then we have socialite, someone who's known simply for being known or known for being a part of a particular, social group, probably upper class social group if you're a socialite. So just there could be lots of negative associations to you based on your Uranian qualities. Those would be negative or disruptive or destructive experiences you could have with this aspect. All right, everybody, this is one of the more interesting sections of the video, and I've saved it for last unintentionally. I don't know why I put it off till the end. I had forgotten about it, I guess, or thought that I'd already covered it. But Uranus and the moon, what an intriguing combination of energies, either in a natal chart via any aspect or via any sort of transit from Uranus to the moon. What are the constructive experiences or outcomes or personality qualities that we could expect to see with any aspect? Even if you normally think of it as a negative aspect, like Uranus square moon, constructive elements can come out of that, for example. So surges of empathy are one thing. Like all of a sudden you're just like, whoa, I really understand how this other person feels. I get it. And that's nice. It's really helpful to suddenly have those surges where you're like, whoa, I totally get where you're coming from. It's like this sudden recognition, like this aha moment, but it has to do with empathy. Like suddenly you have this empathy and you're like, I totally get it. There can also be a strong sense of group cohesion, almost like the group that you're in becomes your family. So, if you're involved in an organization, or just a social group or professional network. That group can become sort of like a family to you. This could be even an online group or something that you're involved in. But the moon gives those qualities of home and family, and Uranus has a lot to do with groups, networks, associations. Also, I wrote group home here. I don't know, like there's something about how the sense of home could be very connected with the idea of groups. But also just with being original or different from other people, because Uranus has those qualities as well. But anyway, there's also an instinct here to find a group. It makes me think of like Finding Dory, is that movie where the fish is trying to get home. That instinct to find the group that you belong to. Surprising emotions or surprising emotional revelations could happen. Big emotional reveals, I would think, during a transit of Uranus to the moon could be a big thing. Also, big changes in the family can happen during a Uranus transit to the moon. Big changes and we'll say changes in the family because we're focusing on the positive experiences now. Eccentric families, unusual families, also someone who's maybe a homebody. You know, the moon is going to connect us to our homes in some way, and when you combine that with Uranus, we could also have a very unusual home or a way of living that is just very not the way that most people do it. There could be a drive to group living, but also with Uranus, sometimes Uranus wants to be the lone wolf. So there could be a desire to just completely live separate from everyone else and move away from society. All right, so those are some things that I'm thinking about. Let's look at the destructive. Okay, so what could potentially happen when Uranus and the moon are making an aspect and there's a destructive, which could be negative or unwanted outcome, or what could happen with Uranus and the moon that could be destructive? Well, we could have emotional neglect or emotional torture almost with Uranus and the moon, because Uranus can be unrelenting. And so if you're trying to like torture someone emotionally or just not leave them alone, this could bring about that sort of, but also it's like someone who maybe uses their emotions as a form of torture, as a form of, emotional violence. Did I write this here? I feel like Moon Uranus could have that sort of experience. Also, just intellectualizing your feelings, which I don't think is necessarily a negative or destructive quality. But if you're doing that at the expense of trying to, like if you're just always trying to avoid your feelings, I think avoidance of feelings maybe could be a negative experience of Uranus Moon. Social distance, social distrust. I mean, these are not necessarily negative or positive, but they can be experienced, you know. Unwanted family. You know, with Uranus and the moon, you could have family that you wish you could sever off from, or that you just can't really identify with, or you know that your family views you that way. Maybe you're the family sheep, someone else is the family sheep. There could be some sort of unstable home life, generally speaking. So that could be a lot of different things, you know. But generally speaking, there's a lot of shakeups, a lot of change-ups going on in the home life or in the family life. it's hard to, you never know what to expect, or you always know to expect the unexpected in this family or in this home life. There's always going to be something that you wouldn't expect. And so you have to deal with the erratic emotions associated with such an unsettling home life as well. All right, so that's what I'm getting there. Thank you so much if you made it to the end of this video with me. Special shout out for anyone out there with a Uranus moon aspect in their chart. Let me know in the comments if you can relate to this or any of the other aspects mentioned in the video. If you have anything to add. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.